Kim Mulkey just signed a record-breaking contract for 10 years, $32 million. Naturally, people are saying this is great for women's basketball and are complimenting LSU for taking this step. I want to preface this video by saying there's a possibility that Kim Mulkey doesn't care. She could be happy with the money she's getting and just wants to be in her home state. But I believe she got lowballed. If it were me, there's no way I'm signing this, and I'll explain why. For starters, too much can happen in the market in 10 years, especially with this economy. $3.2 million a year might look like $2.5 million in a few years. Remember in 2020 when Patrick Mahomes signed a 10-year contract worth almost $500 million? Fast forward 3 years after he signed, $50 million a year contracts are normal. You have quarterbacks that clearly aren't on Mahomes' level making more than him. Considering the rapid growth rate of women's basketball, we'll see a similar thing happen. Dawn is already making $3.1 million. I could easily see her breaking $4 million a year if she wins another national championship soon. Assuming Gino doesn't decide to retire, he could also command $4 million. They would have a harder time than Dawn and Gino. But I believe there's other coaches who could get similar money to what Kim got in 3 to 5 years. It sounds unbelievable now, but imagine telling someone a few years ago that Jalen Hurts will make more money than Patrick Mahomes. I imagine most people are thinking, how can Kim Mulkey possibly be underpaid? This amount of pay for a women's sports coach is unprecedented. Well, what she did was unprecedented. She won a national championship in only 2 years. LSU women's basketball was in shambles before Kim got there. They couldn't average more than 2,000 fans. As soon as Kim gets there, they average 7,000 fans. The average attendance last year was 9,000. And you best believe it's going to shoot up even more this year. The massive change in attendance generated significantly more revenue, which never would have been possible without Kim Mulkey. There's 2 major factors that determine a coach's pay. Is there a market for their sport, and how much can they win? The winning is self-explanatory. Kim Mulkey is in a rare position where their women's team can outsell the majority of the men's teams in the country. LSU women's basketball averaged nearly 9,000 attendees this year, but their massive spike in popularity didn't happen until later in the year, meaning the average will be higher this year. Iowa sold out all their tickets this year, and the stadium holds about 15,000 people. So let's say LSU will average 12,000 fans in attendance. And that's a very cautious estimate when you consider their massive spike in popularity during the off-season. Let's say LSU can sustain an average of 12,000 in attendance for several years, which I think is very realistic. This would place top 30 in average attendance in men's basketball. Tony Bennett is the head coach for Virginia and makes about $4.1 million a year. They average around 13,000 fans. Arkansas averages about 13,000 in attendance every year and gave their head coach a $4 million per year deal because of the success he was having. Kim Mulkey always has a strong transfer and recruiting class, so she will be competing for a national title almost every year. I think the biggest counter-argument you could make against Kim's contract not being big enough is her scheduling. It's not an exaggeration to say she cost LSU out of millions of dollars and potentially millions in viewership with her weak strength of schedule. If their senior night game had almost 16,000 in attendance, imagine the type of attendance playing UConn or Iowa would have gained. Even playing Louisville would have done crazy numbers. They could have sold these tickets at a much higher price too. Which do you think would make more money? Playing Maryland or Copping State? There's a million other examples you can bring up as well. I think Kim completely killed her leverage with the schedule. I would not be surprised if it was used against her in contract talks. I'm not saying Kim should have played every top 25 team, but I think it would have made negotiations a lot easier. But I want to reiterate, there's a very good possibility Kim Mulkey doesn't care and just wants to coach. I feel like this is one of those videos that won't make sense now but will make sense later. Don't be fooled by the flashy headlines of this being the highest contract for a women's basketball coach ever. LSU got a massive steal. This is no different than when Mahomes got his contract, only for it to be outdone a few years later. Do you think contracts will continue to increase for women basketball coaches? Or will this be the peak? I'd love to hear your thoughts.